Welcome to the Powercat Podcast, the original K-State sports show. Now let's go to the rolling Flint Hills, home of the Cats and Dogs studio. Here's your host, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to another edition of the Powercat Podcast. Fitz and Coles and Gills here in Las Vegas, Nevada. We got Ryan Gilbert out of the casino to do a podcast
for a few hours.
We're having a good time. Very busy time out here in Las Vegas, but Big 12 Media Days is coming to a close. The final interviews are happening right here in front of us as the second day players are wrapping up their breakout sessions at Kansas right here by us. Thank you for not saying anything, Cole.
Well, I just think it's amazing. I'm praying for stability. If you've been following along at home, you will know that the Wi-Fi at Allegiant Stadium is, shall we say, about as good as the Raiders.
Well, yeah, Wi-Fi is bad, but we have a dedicated line. We're hardline, and it still looks like crap.
And we have one bar right now as the crow fries on the computer with the hard line.
Nice. That's really impressive. Well, we're going to get to your questions from Wabash Station, but your reminder, we're sponsored by the Fridge Wholesale Liquor. Whenever you're in Manhattan, stop by the Fridge at the corner of this and that in the town in which we live. It is not in Las Vegas, although there could be. It is the Las Vegas of alcohol sales for Manhattan. Fair enough. Who's doing the reading here?
Gilbert's got it.
Ryan Gilbert with your questions from Wabash Station.
First question is from KSU Royals Cat. Where do you rate the media days in Las Vegas compared to Dallas? Which one is better for the conference after experiencing it in both locations? Sorry, I can't speak.
I don't know how this guy wins at gambling, but he does. Well, it's hard to tell. So I knew Texas and Oklahoma departing, particularly Texas, there would be a dip in the amount of media. But you can't tell if that's the Texas effect or the location that is impacted. Because this is not as crowded.
No.
I mean, it's crowded, but it's not nearly as crowded as what it is in Dallas. Because honestly, so much of the original footprint of the Big 12 could just drive there. So you had all kinds of smaller outlets that are able to go. And when you're in Las Vegas and it's $500 a ticket basically from anywhere, airfare wise, it gets a little expensive. So I think a combination of Texas leaving and being in Las Vegas has cut it down. I got to say the actual on the field, the facilities, the setup here is better.
Yes.
It's more compact. We've got everything we need for the media over in a small area. They did bring the old Trapper. The old Trapper wasn't here, which is very disappointing, but we did have the jerky.
But the small bags of beef jerky, which Old Trapper, again, I don't understand. You gave the media big bags. I guess with the conference expanding, they had to go to small bags of beef jerky. I don't know. Gilbert,
Right.
I think this is your fault. I don't know for sure.
I think we could have the Mountaineer from West Virginia.
Just fill in?
Yeah, they're twins pretty much.
Yeah,
so that's my vote.
I want to go clubbing with the old Trapper.
Can I say that Dallas is better for the conference? Is that just me being an old fart?
Geographically, it makes no sense to be out here.
No.
But I'm not going to complain about being out here.
It welcomes in the new schools.
It does.
And, they had to relocate for a couple of years because of World Cup stuff in Arlington. But where else you got to do it? You could move it to Kansas City, but I don't know. I would be fine with having it at the Star again in Frisco. I thought that was actually a good setup for the event. But Brett Yormark doesn't want to look small time.
No.
So he's doing it here.
So here we are, yeah.
I think it's cool to be in here, but we could have done this in ballrooms.
Yeah.
At the Bellagio and saved money on a lot of things. Not having to bus over it, but and once you're at the event, doesn't matter if you're in Arlington, Las Vegas, or Anchorage. You put your head down through 2 days and get your work done, and you go home, which in Anchorage would be sled dogs, but luckily we got Southwest flights.
I think for the players too, it's different. I mean, there are some schools who are taking the approach of we're going to fly in the day of, like K-State, fly back out. There are other schools that are taking the approach of we're going to stay here and let our players act like idiots in the Bellagio. Not going to name names.
Not going to name schools.
But we saw that last night. And so.
And not just players, though.
No.
Yeah, we're not going to get into that. But it's so weird at our hotel because we've got basketball players, coaches. We've got just this
Team
hodgepodge.
USA is here this week.
Yeah,
So
and they're in the same tower
Yeah.
at the Bellagio as us. So it's been like you think there's people there waiting for you to get off the elevator because there's hundreds of people standing out there. I'm like, hi, I'm not LeBron.
They're like, oh, yeah.
But yeah, I as long as it's well run, I'm fine. I hope it does go back to Dallas so eventually.
Yep.
But he likes Las Vegas.
next question from Powercat Ryan. Other than anything Mike Gundy said, what was the most surprising comment from a coach or player at Big 12 Media Days?
I'll let you go.
I think Deion Sanders. I mean, it's always fascinating to hear him talk, but he talked about culture, Ryan. I don't know if you caught that, but he asked a reporter, well, what is culture? He's openly questioning what is culture because that's not exactly something that he buys into. And again, you cannot get a coach different from Deion Sanders and Chris Kleiman. Those two guys are completely different. So Kleiman openly talks about culture and how that is such an important factor in K-State's program. And Deion is saying it's not about culture, it's about winning football games. And so yeah, I mean the stories, if we were to recap the main stories of Big 12 Media Days, were Mike Gundy and Deion Sanders.
No, the question says anything other than Mike Gundy.
Well, anything other
You
than
didn't
Mike
listen
Gundy.
to the question.
Sorry, Powercat Ryan. But I don't know. I mean, you give me your 2 cents because I know you've been hanging around.
I agree.
too.
I agree, but I do have to say, thousands of times, thousands. Look, back in the 80s, we did things. The cops weren't even enforcing DUIs. Thousands of times. Wow,
No.
that's mullet power. That's mullet power. Normal man couldn't do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm really looped out of it right now. I think you might have slipped me some of that stuff you got, Fitz.
I don't know what you're talking about.
From Itame BB, what will Brett Yormark's next move, which only he would be able to envision and deliver? Did I say that right?
What will be Brett Yormark's next
Next
move,
move.
which only he will be able to envision and deliver? It's got to be the media. It's got to be the basketball media rights.
Yeah, he came out and said yesterday that the rights are set through 2030 or later than that. He said we'll enter back in the market in 2030. So they're pretty set, but there remains a lot of interest from him of having separate media contracts for football and basketball. I guess it would be probably basketball and the other sports. And I think there's a feeling within the marketplace that the Big 12 is getting vastly underpaid for its basketball product.
Mhm.
And I think he's aware of that. I think he knows he can close the gap in the money with basketball. Not all the way, but he can narrow it up because, short of getting Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, Miami from the ACC, it's hard to move the needle with improving the football product from a perception standpoint. Because so many people, even people that are here, just see the shiny helmets of their childhood, and that's
Right.
the only thing they care about. So, I'll be interested to see what his next move is. I thought it was interesting that he said we're shifting the Big 12 Mexico initiative to be about women's soccer and baseball.
Yes.
Which I thought was really interesting, but I still think they need to play football down there. But I think there's real concerns that he won't come out and say about the climate right now in Mexico and having fans go into Mexico. Somehow the Big 12 is accountable for their safety, whatever. But yeah, I'm really in favor of that. I think there's a whole Spanish-speaking segment of the United States that embraces sports, and I think he could create Big 12 football fans in Mexico if he wanted to do that. But
I think so too. I think you talk about Big 12 Mexico. That's another thing that he talked a little bit about it. And Fitz, I think part of it is too, like, baseball and soccer are the two most popular sports in Mexico, and so I don't think necessarily fans down there would spend a ton of money to go to a football game or to go to a basketball game, as Fitz gets a phone call. The things that you only see on the Powercat Questions podcast. Thankfully, it wasn't hooked up to his computer, or else the ring would have gone off. Amazing how that works. The turns have officially tabled, as they say in a certain TV show. But baseball and soccer are the most popular sports in Mexico. So I actually think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think another thing that we want to talk about with the Big 12, I mean, the private equity stuff came up a lot. And, I'm not the best person to speak on that. I know our own Brian Hanley on the Big 12 Insiders did a great job breaking that down. We covered that in depth. So if you're interested in that, I highly recommend going to check that out. But, man, there was a lot that Brett Yormark talked about. To me, this media days felt like you have Gundy, you have Dion, and you have Yormark. Those are the three main stories that I take away from this whole entire 2-day period.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you've got Kleiman and Whittingham going on the first day, and they were, Utah was right here in front of us, and Kansas State was down there, but it just didn't seem to have the oomph, of what would be like if Colorado was the favorite, or even Oklahoma State, because who knows what Gundy's going to say. Thousands of times? Oh, it's a lot of drinking and driving.
Couple things.
Yes.
Number one,
Thousands.
sponsored by Totino's. Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys neglected to mention we had Totino's for lunch both days.
They
Pizza
sucked.
rolls. Not just pizza rolls. There were some sandwiches and stuff, but
Bad.
I appreciated that. Also, Yormark likes to move members of the media up, right? So you think next year for media days we might be up in the top rows doing media days
Yeah.
after it
shatter
treats us for
questions.
basketball?
Yeah. Shatter questions.
Maybe
from
the
Memphis.
Wi-Fi will be better up there.
It probably would be. You can't go too high, right, Fitz?
No, you can't.
Up
No.
in Vegas.
I even tried to set up our own Wi-Fi and I couldn't do it. It's been a frustrating weekend. Technology.
Week, not weekend.
Oh, whatever. It's Vegas.
Can we stay here for the whole weekend?
Yes.
Okay.
We could. Sorry, honey.
Last question of the first half is from KSU Royals Cat. Preseason rankings are never accurate. Of the top 8 teams, who do you guess will finish in the bottom half? And of those in the bottom 8, who will finish in the top half of the league? So who's going to be bad that's not supposed to be bad? And
I
who's
didn't
going to
follow
be
that
good, not
question.
supposed to be good?
Who's going to be good that's not supposed to be good?
Yeah, and the opposite.
I think Oklahoma State's going to be bad,
I can see it.
Okay.
especially if Ollie, they're sorting this thing out. But, I mean,
Let alone the distraction that creates.
right. Gundy did a good job taking the pressure off him.
Yeah.
Right.
But who's going to rise up? Someone will. I'm picking Iowa State to be up there. Just a lot of people think they're the middle of the pack. I think the way their schedule sets up, the final game of the season is going to be huge between K-State and Iowa State.
Was Houston picked to finish last?
15th.
15th.
Arizona State's last.
Houston. So Houston's not going to finish 15th. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Yeah, Willie can coach.
They are not going to finish 15th. So if you want to count them, if they finish 10th, does that answer this question? Or do they got to finish in the top 8?
Got to finish in the top 8 to answer the question.
I don't know if Houston can get to the top 8, but I think they could get to a bowl.
Yeah, see, it's hard for me to assess. There's so clearly 6 teams that are worse on paper than the other 10.
Yeah.
It just kind of.
Then there's 3 within that 3 as well,
Yeah.
kind of.
And I mean, could UCF bounce up from what we think is the lower half finish to the upper half? Yeah. Again, though, to make these predictions, you do really need to sit down and study the schedules and see where everyone's going and who's coming to their place. Because now with the 16-team conference and only 9 games, you're going to have some schedules out of balance. I mean, someone's going to play a tough schedule and someone's going to play an easy schedule. And we can sit here and say, oh, Utah's got an easy schedule and Kansas has got a tough schedule or whatever. But again, it's the Big 12. Until they start playing, you don't really know who's easy and tough.
Yeah.
I mean, you might run into someone that we all assumed would be an easy win for someone, and they start kicking everyone's butt. So that's just the way the conference is. That's what Yormark kept emphasizing. It's the most competitive conference in the country.
I've said a lot of good things about KU, but that bubble can pop real quick if some injuries happen on offense. And so it is still KU football. They've turned it around. Lance Leipold's done a great job, no doubt about it. But can they keep that on a consistent year out and year out basis? I think they can, but to see them finish 9th or 10th would not at all surprise me with that schedule and also some of the health risks on the offensive side of the ball. So, but go to the bottom half, like TCU, Baylor, Texas Tech, those teams can easily finish in the top half.
Yeah.
Can Colorado?
I don't want to believe it. I don't want to buy into it. I know you love Dion and Prime, and it was driving me nuts listening to him up on the stage, to be honest with you.
There's a lot of people that feel that way.
You either love or you hate him.
You do. And you know what? You know who Pete Weber is?
Is he the bowler?
He is the bowler.
Who do you think you are? I am?
you know what he says?
You either hate me or you love me.
Or love me, you watched.
Yep.
That is exactly what's going on.
You think
with
Fitz
Deion
is
Sanders.
cute? You think he's ugly? You're still tuned in.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to work. I think
Prime, Colorado.
and you want to know why? Because he doesn't know what culture is.
Yeah.
He doesn't understand that.
And he deflects it, right? Somebody asked him. We talked about that.
Coach, if you don't have culture, you have culture. It's just a bad one.
Yeah.
You have taught your players be in it for yourself. And he's got a caste system where Boyds and Travis Hunter get different treatment. I mean, just look at who they brought. They brought two guys named Sanders, Travis Hunter, and the punter. It's almost like an insult to the rest of the roster.
The punter.
You got my 2.5 sons because he treats Travis Hunter like a son, and then the punter. The rest of you can screw off. They're not worthy of this.
Yeah,
I think culture is going to be his downfall. Culture is why Texas always recruited well and didn't turn it into much on the field. And now Sark's figured out culture, and now they're going to be really good.
That's what makes Chris Kleiman so good.
Yes.
Is maybe he's not, his teams aren't as talented as other teams in the league, but and that was probably his worst season at K-State. I don't know if the culture in the locker room that season was great, but he's obviously turned it around.
Yep, it wasn't good. That it for the first half.
That's
it for first half. It's going to be a quick one today. We got a lot of work still to do from here in Las Vegas. Got to get this up on the internets with bad Wi-Fi, either here or at the hotel. Wish us luck, but we'll be back in the second half with more of your questions from Wabash Station. We got to get the ad to run, guys. Got to get it.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Please visit The Fridge Wholesale Liquor, located at the corner of Claflin and Westport Road in Manhattan, Kansas.
Welcome back to the show. Let's return to the Cats and Dogs studio.
Welcome back to the Powercat Podcast. Fitz and Gills and Colsey Woolsey. I just called him that on the podcast. Right here at Allegiant Stadium. And you know what happened right here in front of us. So we've got the 10-yard line, the 5-yard line, the goal line.
I'm believing. Yeah, the Steelers scored a touchdown in this stadium last year.
You know what happened.
No, you're going to have to tell me. I don't remember.
The Chiefs scored a touchdown in overtime Super Bowl. Right there.
And did they win?
Yes, they did win.
Oh.
They did win.
That's amazing, isn't it?
The Steelers weren't in the Super Bowl.
But they made the playoffs, and that is all that matters.
Playoffs. Yeah, well, congratulations. I'm going to roll around in the end zone and celebrate some more.
I still think I see some red and gold confetti.
I'll carry this podcast for the last half hour. You guys go celebrate in the end zone. Goodness.
Okay, we're sponsored by the Fridge Wholesale Liquor. Whenever you come to Manhattan for a game, and the games are coming up soon, make sure you leave that liquor at home and get your tailgating needs right there at the fridge, so it'll be fresh right off the liquor tree. At the Fridge Wholesale Liquor, they got a great great selection, great prices, and great people. Stop in and say, hey, I hear about you on the Powercat Podcast. And they'll go, huh? Who? What?
Before we go, I have to make a confession. One time I went to the Fridge and I said that I was on the Powercat Podcast, and I asked if I could get a discount.
Didn't work, did it?
And they laughed at me.
They go, what's that? They go, who's Fitz?
Just when you walk in, say, hi, hey, Mike, because there's a good chance one of the mics will be working.
Mike or Kevin?
Yep. Kevin, if the boss is working, you might get that discount because he loves us.
Okay.
More of the questions from Wabash Station. Gilbert, speak.
From Pickles, the strength of the defense is the DL, the defensive line, and secondary in regards to depth and experience per Chris Kleiman. What strength of the defense? Where is the strength of the defense in regards to talent?
Defensive end. I think we're going to see some young defensive ends just erupt for K-State into something really special. The coaches believe it. They've seen it in practice. They were able to preserve some red shirts. But they've got 3 young dudes there that can all play. And they're pretty fired up about what that's going to bring to the table.
There was talk about Ryan Davis. I mean, that's another defensive end who we haven't even brought up on this podcast. But, I mean, between Chidi Obiazar, Jordan Allen, Ryan Davis, that's not even talking about Brendan Mott, who they brought to media days.
And he spoke good about Stufflebean as well.
And Cody Stufflebean, yeah. I mean, there was that 6 guys that realistically, can get time in there. And that doesn't even bring up Toby Osunsami, who another one of those guys who made the transition. So they have plenty of depth at the defensive end. And quite honestly, I think all those guys are going to play. So I actually agree with you for once, Fitz. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned it, though. Depth and obviously talent. So they're checking both of those boxes there.
They are. And I guess that's kind of what Kleiman said too, right? I mean, he said that the defensive line and the secondary were the best spots on the field. But again, I know I'm just going through all the levels here, but I mean, can we talk about Austin Moore for a second? I mean, that guy is a pro's pro, and K-State needed him to come back because of the Asa Newsome injury, because of some other things. People thought Daniel Green might come back. Nobody thought Austin Moore was going to come back. And here's Austin Moore, and Daniel Green's gone. So I think the linebackers have a chance to be pretty good. There's going to be a little bit more rotation there than I think we're used to in the past. But I'm really fired up for this defense because I think the defense has a chance to be a top 5 defense in the conference and maybe even better than that, Fitz.
I agree. I think they really have an opportunity, particularly, if the offense is as good at possessing the ball as we think they will be. That'll give the defense plenty of time to rest and, be out there. That's such a big part of it that people don't calculate in. Why is your defense so bad and your offense is scoring so many points? Because the offense is scoring too quickly. That's why the defense is bad.
Yeah.
It's kind of basic football that the spread coaches can't quite figure out. And I think K-State systems give them a good balance between offense and defense.
From Gillum fan 676630. As I get myself more hyped for the season, I feel this team is improved at every position outside of maybe offensive line. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's exactly. I think the offensive line needs to prove itself fairly early.
Mm-hmm.
Look, UT Martin's a pretty good 1AA team. Still do it.
FCS.
Yeah,
You
so
said
still do
prove itself, though. I don't know if they have to prove it. I think they have to gel and get together quickly.
Yeah.
Not necessarily prove it, but just be on the same page quickly.
Yeah, they need to unleash in that opener and build some confidence because you're not messing around. Then you go to New Orleans, then you come home, play Arizona, and boom, you're in Provo for the open of Big 12. So they don't have time to get good.
No.
If that third week against Arizona, they're going to lose if they're still trying to get good. So they don't have much time here to mess around.
It's not like last year.
No.
I mean, for as great as that offensive line was last year, it struggled in the beginning part of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times were Cooper Beebe was going out and playing tackle?
Yep.
So, I mean, yeah, I think that they kind of have a little bit more defined roles this year. I do agree that this team is probably more talented at every single position. Position groups, I would say quarterback, probably not. I mean, it's hard to say that last year's quarterbacks that have the now starter at Ohio State and the now starter at K-State, you're better at quarterback this year from a position group standpoint, but maybe from a production standpoint, I actually think Avery has a chance to put up just as good of numbers, if not better numbers than Will did last year. So you can make that argument. I'm really excited for this season. I'm really excited for this team because, again, it is a brand new conference. We are seeing so many new teams. We are seeing so many new faces here at Big 12 Media Days. The best part about all of it, and Fitz's favorite topic, because you can play with them on College Football 25 as they tear down this poster right here, right in front of us. Sad.
Fitz is crying. He's very emotional about this football game.
Why are they doing that?
I don't know why they're doing that.
They're destroying it.
That's okay. If you pre-order the game, you'll get it next week.
All right. We were talking with Big V earlier, obviously a former offensive line, and the pieces are there.
He was a former offensive line, like
lineman. He was an offensive lineman.
Okay.
He's probably big enough to be all 5 of the dudes on the offensive line.
Good enough.
Anywho, the pieces are there, and I think there's little doubt about the pieces, the talent, the depth, what have you. It just is a matter of coming together and gelling together like we're talking about. So that's going to be the biggest question. You want to get that early, obviously, but if you can pick up wins while you're learning, there's nothing wrong with that per se, but you do want to get that down rather early.
Agreed. They've got to gel. They just have to, and or everything else will get stunted. They've got to come together. You can't run the ball if your offensive line's out of whack.
Yep. But K-State fans kind of got not complacent, but just assuming that the offensive line is always going to be that good. Going into last year, it was just, Deuce Vaughn, obviously he was a special player, but offensive line plays a huge part in that. And so it's not going to be as good as it maybe was in years past, but it certainly can still be sufficient.
Agreed.
From Chris 66204, which new conference member is going to be the biggest villain? The Utes and their attitude have to be the betting favorites to be the villain, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You think?
Yeah.
It's not Colorado.
The Twitter beef between, I would say, K-State and Utah is probably at its peak right now over Colorado.
Over Colorado?
So Utah.
Yeah.
You both
I'm
agree-
agreeing.
You
Yep.
both agree
Yes.
Utah.
Yeah. No. Oh, I see. Yeah. Above
Other
Colorado.
than KU, obviously.
Are we talking about just this year, or are we talking about in general? Because I think maybe in general you might be right, but I
Well,
feel
not
like
they don't play this year, so
that's very true. But who's the one team that everybody in the conference is not going to like? I think that's really what it comes down to.
I think it's Utah.
Yeah. Well, they made it pretty clear they are just doing this because they have to. That's a really good way to endear yourself to the new conference.
Yeah, it's not just the fan base. It's much deeper than that.
Oh, it is. It's absolutely.
For sure.
I've had so many people, just a few fans. No, it's
Yep.
it's pretty cultural. It's pretty cultural. I mean, you even sense from talking to people, well, we don't really want to be in this conference. And like I said on a recent daily delivery, you got to remember that these are the first schools to join a conference in realignment against their will. I mean, they really wanted to stay in their conference, but that wasn't a possibility. So these are kind of the first refugees, and they're not sure where they're at, why they're here. And I think this helped being around, sort of make you feel like a conference. And I think once the games start getting playing, we'll focus on Big 12 football and not these storylines.
I can't wait for that. I'm so sick and tired of talking about fans.
Me too.
It just is it's kind of obnoxious, Mr. Gilbert.
Mr. Gilbert.
But it is pretty draining. And again, that's kind of what we see at Big 12 Media Days. I don't think there was any players outside of Colorado that really felt like they were too good to be here, which is always, that happens. That's happened before with Texas. It's happened before with Oklahoma. I didn't get that vibe from any of the coaches, any of the players. The only group of players that I kind of got that vibe from was Colorado. But again, it's just a completely different animal in Boulder right now.
That punter for Colorado is a much better athlete than anybody on K-State. Come on. That was a joke.
This feels like a skit in the office where we all look at the camera.
Gilbert doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah,
Last question. Go ahead.
There's just a weird vibe here.
It's just strange.
Clearly, like, who are you? Oh, yeah, Arizona State. Yeah, it's just it's very strange, particularly for all of us who've been around this conference since the start. There's 6 teams left.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. And, even 2, West Virginia and TCU, came in late.
Yep.
And they feel like old partners, but the other half of the conference is within a year. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. May not be done yet either. Who knows?
Yep. Last question, little hoops action. This is a 2-parter. I guess do you want to do we'll just do both of them. From 32 Flu, is Drake really the best we can do as an opponent at T-Mobile? And then also from El Camino Cat, the field for Paradise Jam is a little underwhelming. Drake at the T-Mobile Center in KC also seemed underwhelming. Is this the type of non-con schedule that Tang wants, or are there other factors at play?
I'm confused, to be honest.
Yeah.
They've talked so much about having quality games in the non-conference to test your team and get on your resume, and we're not seeing that right now. We're seeing them, honestly, go to the Weber model. Let's go schedule some wins.
Yep.
I don't necessarily. I think last year they bit off too much, but this is a overreaction as far as I can tell. Now, keep in mind, they didn't really get to control who was in the Paradise Jam.
I'm going to push back on that when you finish.
Well,
But
okay, yeah.
But they knew that other major schools were going to go there. They're going there for one reason.
Yeah.
It's a Caribbean.
Yeah.
And they've said every single year that they want to play in the Caribbean.
Pretty much.
Right?
Yeah.
That's going to be their postseason. That's going to be their preseason tournament. I don't know. Like, I look at this non-conference schedule and I feel like it's the exact opposite of last year, right? He felt like his team could never get it together because they were continuously being pushed. They were continuously getting in tough games and they could never figure anything out. Well, now he wants to try and go the opposite way and figure stuff out before conference play, because I think the reasoning behind this, guys, is you're going to play 20 games in the best conference in America. So hypothetically speaking, you could have 18 shots at quad 1 wins.
Yeah.
And why schedule a quad 1 win in the non-conference if you don't have to? At a certain point, however many quad 1 games you play becomes irrelevant because it's about how many quad 1 wins you have.
Right.
Yep.
You're right. But
So
yeah, as for Drake in Kansas City, we don't know who else is on this.
Drake's not terrible though either.
No,
Remember that.
they just had a coaching change though. They just lost their coach and their best player, who run West Virginia now.
Yeah.
But there's also, I know everyone in Kansas City wants a really good game. Of course they do, but there's been pushback. Why are you playing the good games there instead of Bramlage Coliseum? Home fans are like, shouldn't we have some of these games here? So maybe they are going to have a game that maybe would have fit Kansas City, but it's going to be Manhattan. I don't know. And also you got to balance, when is T-Mobile available?
Right.
Okay, now you got to find someone that's available on those dates, and that gets a little bit more complicated.
Yeah. Cole, you mentioned the conference going to 20 games, and I think that's a big part in this non-conference schedule. Obviously, you talked about Paradise Jam Fits. You don't know who's playing in it, but it's not going to be any Power 5 teams. Maybe one, but
it's worse than I thought it would be.
It on paper maybe, but Longwood, McNeese, and UAB were all NCAA tournament teams last year. So is it brand names or anything like that? No, but it could be a lot worse. You just look at the names of the teams, you think it's going to be terrible. It'll be competitive for K-State, but I think kind of the standard here for playing in a tournament like this is you got to win 3 games. Yeah. Anything less, and obviously that's a failure for the tournament, but on your schedule, man, that's a huge knock, especially when your non-conference is so poor. So you go back to last year with the non-conference, and K-State had an 8-10 record in the Big 12 and picked up a win in Kansas City. In Jerome Tang's eyes, that was enough to get him into the field, but the non-conference slate was very weak and the resume was poor. And so I shouldn't say the slate was weak. The resume was weak, right? They had some good opponents. They couldn't beat anybody. And so that was really what held them out of the field. And so you go to 20 games, obviously you have more opportunities to pick up those big time wins. But if you go 8-10 in the Big 12, or excuse me, I guess it would be 9-11, 10-10, maybe 11-9, that's probably good enough to get you in. But with the schedule you have, if you lose 2-3 games, even if it is St. John's or whoever those quality teams are, is Nebraska on there this year or not? I'm blanking.
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
That's probably maybe in the future, but you've got to win those games in the non-conference. And so Tang, I know he's talked about the philosophy of learning and growing early on in the season. It's not necessarily about winning games. It's about getting better, progressing, and finally clicking into conference play. Well, now you've got to win those games. You got to be ready to go from day one. And I know last year it was a little unfair with Naquan and Quez Glover, being out for the year. But this year it's got to be hitting the ground running from day one, because Fitz, I've talked about this in right here in Vegas when they lost to USC to open up the season. There was no panic. They didn't care because they were fine with it at the time. They thought they had the whole season ahead of them to grow and get better. Obviously, they got better a little bit, but not enough. And so when you have a schedule like that, this year's different. You got to win those games early on. You can't afford to be losing games in the non-conference. You can lose, looking at the rest of the non-conference, man, you can lose maybe 1-2 at the most. But if you lose any more than that, you got to make some serious damage in the Big 12.
Is that it? Are we done?
That was it. Yeah.
We appreciate you watching the Powercat Podcast. A little bit short this week. We'll be back next week with another edition back in our own little private studios. It's weird to be with them in person.
It's weird holding a microphone. That's what's throwing me off, I think.
Yeah. It's like, what do we down here? Just keep track of yourself, Gilbert. Thanks for watching. I got to hit the buttons now. We're leaving.
This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.